My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 42 years old. The morning my husband's girlfriend called me the ex-wife, in a hospital waiting room, I was sitting in an insurance office reviewing a beneficiary form signed 11 years earlier. She didn't know that document existed. Neither did my husband. I counted exactly 9 raindrops sliding down the outside of the office window before the agent returned with the archive box. 9. I remember because counting things has always helped me think. Not calm down. Think, there is a difference. The box was gray cardboard with a faded label that read, Policy L4472918 issued. March 12, 2014, face value, $2,100,000. The woman carrying it was named Evelyn. She was 60 if she was a day. White hair, blue blazer, the kind of person who alphabetizes everything without being asked. She set the box on the table and looked at me. Mrs. Donovan? I nodded. She opened the lid, and that's when the story really started. Not when Mark cheated, not when he left, not when Ashley moved into the house before our divorce papers were finalized. The story started years earlier, back when I thought we were building something permanent, back when I still believed loyalty and permanence were the same thing. They aren't. I learned that slowly. The expensive way. 14 years earlier, I was standing inside a half-finished house in Charlotte, North Carolina. The drywall wasn't painted yet. The kitchen cabinets hadn't arrived. The floors were covered with protective paper. Mark was holding a tape measure. I was holding a notebook. I remember because I wrote everything down. Dimensions, budgets, contractor names, deadlines. At 28, I had already been working as a CPA for 6 years. Numbers made sense to me. People didn't always. Mark liked that about me, at least in the beginning. He said I brought stability into his life. What he really meant was that I handled details he didn't want to think about. Taxes, mortgage paperwork, insurance applications, retirement accounts. The boring infrastructure of adulthood, I handled all of it, happily. At the time, it felt like teamwork. Years later, I realized teamwork requires both people to be pulling in the same direction. The first warning sign happened in 2015. I didn't know it was a warning sign then. I just filed it away. The way I always did. We were at a neighborhood barbecue. There were maybe 30 people there. Mark was telling a story. Everyone was laughing. Halfway through, I realized he was describing something I had done, except he was telling it as if he had done it. A small thing. A refinance strategy that saved us nearly $18,000 over the life of our mortgage. My work. His story. I remember standing there holding a paper plate and counting. 7 seconds. That was how long I waited for him to correct himself. He never did. Later that night I mentioned it. His response was immediate. Does it matter? I remember those 3 words, not because they were cruel, because they were revealing. People tell you who they are, usually long before you're ready to hear it. The years moved quickly after that. Career promotions, vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, the ordinary architecture of a marriage. We never had children, not by choice. After 3 failed fertility treatments, we stopped trying. The final treatment cost $22,700. I know because I still have the invoice. Mark said we should move forward, focus on the life we already had. And for a while, that's exactly what we did. We traveled, we renovated the house, we built investment accounts. By 2022, our combined assets exceeded $1.8 million. Not wealthy by Charlotte standards, but comfortable, secure. At least that's what I thought. Security is an interesting thing. Most people think it comes from money. I've learned it comes from information. The person with the information usually has the power. Then Diane entered the story, my mother-in-law, the architect, though I wouldn't understand that role until much later. Diane cared deeply about appearances, more than truth, more than relationships, appearances. Her Christmas cards looked like magazine covers. Her social media posts looked professionally staged. Her favorite sentence was, "What will people think?" Not what was right, not what was fair. What will people think? She adored Mark, not in a healthy way, in a possessive way. The kind that turns adult sons into extensions of their mothers. At family gatherings, she still called him my boy. He was 40 years old, she still said it, I counted once. At Thanksgiving, she used the phrase 14 times. 14, I counted. The enforcer was Robert, Mark's father, a quiet man, former high school principal, good reputation, good manners, good intentions, and absolutely incapable of challenging Diane. If Diane was a storm, Robert was a weather vane, always turning whichever direction the wind demanded. He wasn't malicious. That would have been easier. He was passive, which sometimes causes the same damage, just more slowly. The beneficiary arrived much later. Ashley Monroe, 29, marketing coordinator, bright smile. perfect teeth. Social media account full of inspirational quotes. The kind of woman who posted photographs of coffee cups with captions about gratitude. I met her exactly once before discovering the affair. Company holiday party, December 2024. She shook my hand and complimented my necklace. 34 seconds. That's how long our conversation lasted. I know because I looked at my watch afterward, not because she mattered, because I had an early morning meeting. Funny what details stay with you. The affair started 6 months later. Though I didn't know it then. The first indication wasn't lipstick or text messages or mysterious business trips, it was life insurance. A sentence I never expected to say, but it's true. The first crack appeared in paperwork, where cracks usually appear if you're paying attention. I was organizing household records one Saturday afternoon, a normal activity for me. I found a missing annual statement, nothing dramatic, just absent. The statement should have been in the file cabinet. It wasn't. I asked Mark about it. He answered too quickly. It's probably online. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but something about the speed of the answer stayed with me. I wrote the date in my planner. June 14, 2025. I didn't know why, I just did. Have you ever noticed something small that felt wrong but couldn't explain why? Not enough to accuse anyone, not enough to act, just enough to remember. If you have, tell me in the comments. Because sometimes those tiny moments become important years later, and sometimes they become everything. 3 months after that conversation, Mark started working late. Then later, then even later. Every explanation sounded reasonable. That was the problem. Good lies usually do. A conference, a client dinner, quarterly reports, industry networking, nothing impossible, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. If someone had asked me then whether my marriage was in trouble, I probably would have said no. Not because everything was fine, because deterioration is difficult to see from the inside. It's like watching a shoreline disappear from a boat. The movement happens slowly enough that you don't notice until you're already far away. The first undeniable proof arrived accidentally. March 8, 2026. 11:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I took a screenshot. Mark was in the shower. His phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't snooping, I was reading. The screen lit up. A message appeared, just 7 words. I miss waking up beside you. Ashley, no last name. No explanation needed. 7 words, that was all it took. I stared at the screen for 12 seconds, I counted. Then I put the phone back exactly where it had been. When Mark returned from the bathroom, I said nothing. That silence cost me, more than I can explain. But it taught me something important. Information is strongest before the other person knows you have it. So I waited and watched, and documented the way I always had, the way I would need to, because by then a document already existed. A document neither Mark nor Ashley remembered. A document sitting quietly in an archive box, waiting. And when I finally learned what it was, everything changed. For the next 23 days, I said nothing. Not because I was afraid. Because I wanted facts. Facts survive where emotions don't. I created a folder on my laptop. The name was simple. Household Records 2026. Nothing suspicious, nothing dramatic. Inside it, I saved screenshots, bank statements, calendar entries, travel receipts, emails. I wasn't building a case, not yet. I was building a timeline. There is a difference. One assumes guilt, the other discovers it. Every evening after Mark went to sleep, I spent exactly 30 minutes organizing information. No more, no less. I timed it. 30 minutes keeps you objective. 3 hours turns you into an obsession. I knew the difference because I work with audits. Patterns matter, emotion doesn't. The pattern appeared quickly. March 12, dinner with client. Receipts showed 2 entrees. March 18, conference in Raleigh. Hotel booking revealed 1 king bed. March 27, late meeting. Credit card charge at a wine bar 32 miles from his office. April 4, weekend conference. Ashley posted a beach photograph from the exact location where Mark claimed to be attending workshops. I counted. 14 contradictions in 28 days. Not proof, but not coincidence either. The hardest part wasn't discovering the affair. It was realizing how long the preparation had been happening. Affairs don't begin when someone sends a text. They begin when someone starts making room for dishonesty. The text is just evidence. The decision happened earlier, much earlier. On April 11th, I met with a divorce attorney. Not because I was filing, because I wanted information. The attorney's name was Melissa Hart, 53 years old, sharp eyes, no wasted words. Her office overlooked South Tryon Street. I arrived at exactly 8:00 a.m. I know because I checked my watch twice. Melissa listened for 20 minutes without interrupting. Then she asked one question. Do you handle your family's financial records? Yes, all of them. Almost all. Nodded. Then she said something I wrote down immediately. People who hide relationships often hide money. I underlined it twice. At the time, I thought she was talking about divorce assets. I had no idea she was pointing me towards something much bigger. 3 weeks later, the second contradiction appeared, and this one involved insurance. I was updating our household inventory. Another ordinary Saturday. Another ordinary task. I logged into our insurance portal. Everything looked normal. Home insurance, auto insurance, umbrella policy. Then I noticed something missing. The life insurance beneficiary section. Gone, not hidden, gone. The page had been modified, updated, changed. The portal showed a note. Beneficiary information updated, January 19, 2026. I stared at the screen. January 19. 3 months before I discovered Ashley, 3 months. I printed the page immediately. Then I checked my records. Nothing, no notification, no copy. No amendment, no email, nothing. That was unusual. Insurance companies document everything, everything. The next Monday, I called the insurer. I expected a simple answer. Instead, I got Evelyn, the woman with the gray archive box. Though at the time I didn't know she would become the witness who changed everything. She introduced herself, asked several verification questions, then paused. A long pause, 7 seconds, I counted. Mrs. Donovan, she said carefully, I'm seeing something unusual. What kind of unusual? Another pause. There's an active beneficiary designation. I waited, and there's also an archive designation requiring manual review. I stopped writing. Manual review, those 2 words mattered. In compliance departments, manual review means someone noticed something. Computers process normal situations. Humans investigate exceptions. What kind of archive designation? I asked. I can't discuss details over the phone. Can I schedule an appointment? Yes. She hesitated, then added something unexpected. I recommend you do. I wrote that down too. People in compliance departments don't make recommendations casually, especially not verbal ones. The appointment was scheduled for May 18, 9 days away. That became the fast timeline, 9 days. Everything suddenly revolved around that date. I continued gathering information, continued documenting, continued acting normal. The countdown had started. Mark didn't know it, but I did. 3 days before the appointment, Robert called. My father-in-law almost never called me directly. In 14 years, maybe 6 times, this was number 7, I checked afterward. The conversation lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds. I know because my phone records showed it. At first, the call seemed harmless. Weather, family, work. Then his voice changed, not dramatically, just enough, like someone testing ice before stepping onto a frozen lake. Mark's been under a lot of pressure lately. I said nothing. He feels misunderstood. Still nothing. Robert exhaled, a long, tired sound. Then he said something that stayed with me. Some things have already gone farther than they should have. I sat perfectly still. Robert, I asked quietly, what does that mean? Silence, 5 seconds, 6, 7. Then he changed the subject. The call ended 90 seconds later. But the damage was done. He knew something, not everything, but something. The enforcer always does. That's why they're called the enforcer. Not because they act, because they don't. That night I couldn't sleep. For the first time since discovering Ashley, doubt appeared. Real doubt. Not about the affair, about myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the insurance update was administrative. Maybe the archived record meant nothing. Maybe I was constructing a story from incomplete facts. I got out of bed at 2:17 a.m., walked downstairs, made tea, sat at the kitchen table, and looked at the evidence, not feelings, evidence, screenshots, statements, dates, records. I counted 18 separate inconsistencies, 18. When I finished counting, the doubt felt smaller, not gone, smaller. The morning before my insurance appointment, Ashley made a mistake, a significant one that expanded my understanding of the plan. At 9:14 a.m., an email arrived in my inbox. Not intended for me, intended for Mark. Ashley had accidentally selected the wrong contact. The message was only 3 lines. Did you finish updating everything? Your mom said it needs to be done before summer. I don't want surprises later. That was it, no context, no explanation. But suddenly Diane appeared inside the story, not around it, inside it. Your mom said. The words sat on my screen like a warning light. I read the email 3 times, then saved it, printed it, labeled it. Item 21. The next morning, May 18th, I arrived at the insurance office 15 minutes early. The building sat on Fairview Road, 4 stories, glass exterior, quiet lobby. The kind of place where important decisions happen without anyone raising their voice. Evelyn greeted me personally, which surprised me. Most compliance officers don't meet clients at reception. She did. Her expression was professional, but serious. Very serious. She led me into a conference room, closed the door, placed a gray archive box on the table. Then she sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she opened the box. Inside were documents dating back 11 years. Applications, medical records, beneficiary forms, policy amendments, everything. Then Evelyn carefully removed a single folder. Blue, labeled, dated. March 12, 2014. I watched her place it on the table between us. And for the first time, I felt the clock truly ticking. Because whatever was inside that folder had survived 11 years. Multiple policy reviews, countless audits, every system update, every ownership change. It had simply waited. Quietly, like the truth often does. Before I tell you what was inside that folder, I want to ask something. Have you ever stayed silent because speaking too soon would have ruined everything? Not because you were weak, because timing mattered. If you have, tell me below. Sometimes silence protects the truth long enough for it to be heard. And at that moment, sitting across from Evelyn, I realized the next 72 hours were going to determine the rest of my life. Because inside that blue folder was a document neither Mark, Diane, nor Ashley remembered existed. And once it was read aloud, there would be no way to put the story back where it had been. Evelyn opened the blue folder. Then she slid a document across the table. Not a copy, the original. I knew immediately because the paper was thicker than modern forms. The edges had yellowed slightly. The signature ink had faded, but it was still perfectly readable. I looked at the date. March 12, 2014. The same day the policy had been issued. The same year Mark and I bought our first house. The same year we still believed we would grow old together. At the bottom of the page were 2 signatures, mine and Mark's. Directly above them was a clause highlighted in yellow. Evelyn tapped it gently. Please read this section carefully. I did, twice. Then a third time, I counted, 3 readings. The clause was only 41 words long, but it changed everything. The beneficiary designation had been filed under an irrevocable election option offered through a now discontinued policy structure. Any future beneficiary changes required written acknowledgement from both parties. Both parties. Not one, both. I looked up. Evelyn! She nodded slowly. The January update shouldn't have been processed. I felt my heartbeat accelerate, not dramatically, just enough. The way a car engine sounds different when entering a steep hill. How did it happen? Evelyn opened another file. System migration. 2 words. Millions of dollars move because of 2 words every day. System migration. A software update had transferred older policies into a newer platform. The restriction had been archived, not deleted, archived. Which meant the system allowed Mark's request. But compliance review later flagged the discrepancy. And now the claim department had frozen all beneficiary modifications pending investigation. I sat back. For 11 years, that document had existed quietly. Nobody noticed it. Nobody remembered it until now. When did compliance discover this? I asked. Evelyn checked a report. 31 days ago. 31, I counted automatically, 31 days. That meant compliance had found the issue before I even discovered Ashley. Before the accidental email, before the screenshots, before everything. The document had already started fighting back, all by itself. I left the office carrying certified copies, not because I planned to use them immediately, because documentation matters. The original remained in the archive. The copies came home with me. I placed them in a binder, labeled, dated, protected. Item 37. That evening, Mark walked through the front door at 7:43 p.m. I remember because I checked the kitchen clock. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, opened the refrigerator, completely unaware that the foundation underneath his plan had already cracked. I said nothing. That silence cost me again, maybe more than the first one, because now I knew, not suspected. Knew, the affair, the beneficiary change, Diane's involvement, Ashley's expectations, the hidden future they were building. I knew all of it, and still I said nothing. The payoff arrived 17 days later, June 4th, 8:12 a.m. Mark suffered a heart attack, not fatal, but serious, very serious. He was 45 years old, no prior history, no warning signs. One moment he was leaving for work. The next, he was on a stretcher. Life changes quickly, faster than paperwork, faster than affairs, faster than plans. The hospital became the center of everything: doctors, family, waiting rooms, phone calls. Updates, machines, the strange, suspended reality that exists inside medical buildings. I spent 31 hours there during the first 2 days, I counted. On the second afternoon, Ashley arrived, not openly, not confidently, carefully, like someone entering a room she wasn't sure she belonged in because she didn't, not really, not yet. Diane brought her. That told me everything I needed to know. The architect had chosen her side. Publicly, finally. Ashley sat beside Diane. Robert sat across from them, silent, looking exhausted, older than he had a week earlier. Nobody introduced Ashley, nobody explained her presence. Nobody needed to. Truth has a way of announcing itself. At one point, Diane looked directly at me, then at Ashley, then back at me and said, "We all need to think about what's best moving forward." 28 words, I counted. Not one of them addressed what was actually happening. Classic Diane, image before truth, always. 3 days later, Mark stabilized. Doctors expected recovery. Slow recovery, but recovery. And that's when the insurance issue exploded. Not because someone died, because someone anticipated death. There's a difference, a very important difference. The insurance company scheduled a beneficiary verification meeting. Standard procedure when disputes exist. The location was neutral. An attorney's conference room, exactly as policy required. June 11th, 10:00 a.m. Everyone was invited. Mark, me, representatives, legal counsel. The clock started again. 7 days. I spent those 7 days preparing, not emotionally, structurally. Every document went into order: dates, emails, beneficiary records, the accidental message from Ashley, compliance findings, everything. A total of 43 items. I numbered every page. On the morning of June 11th, I arrived 12 minutes early. The conference room overlooked downtown Charlotte. Large table. Chairs, glass walls, neutral territory. Exactly the kind of place where facts matter more than volume. Mark arrived with Diane. Ashley arrived 10 minutes later. Robert came alone. The room became quiet immediately. The kind of quiet that exists before weather changes. The insurance attorney entered carrying 3 folders. Red, blue, black. I remember because I wrote it down later. He introduced himself, reviewed the purpose of the meeting, then began reading, not summarizing, reading, every date. Every amendment, every filing, every compliance note. The room grew quieter with each page. Then he reached the original 2014 document, the one from Evelyn's archive box, the one nobody remembered, the one that had waited 11 years. He placed it on the table, directly in front of Mark, and read the clause aloud, word for word. No interpretation, no commentary, just the document speaking for itself. I looked at Mark. For the first time since this began, I saw something real. Not confidence, not irritation, not performance, fear. 3 seconds, maybe 4, I counted, then it disappeared. The mask returned, but I had seen it. The moment he realized the story he had been telling himself wasn't true. The moment he understood that paperwork remembers things people forget. Ashley spoke first. "That can't be right." The attorney calmly slid the certified record toward her. She stopped talking. Diane tried next. "There must be some misunderstanding." The attorney shook his head. "No, ma'am." That's all he said, "No, ma'am," and 22 months of planning collapsed in 3 syllables. Then something unexpected happened. The witness stood up, not Evelyn, Robert, the enforcer. For the first time in years, maybe decades, he spoke. I knew something was wrong. The room froze, including Diane, especially Diane. Robert looked directly at Mark, then at Ashley, then at me. I should have said something earlier. Nobody interrupted. Nobody could. Truth sounds different when it finally arrives. The attorney completed the review. The beneficiary modification was invalid. The original designation remained enforceable. Case closed. Legally speaking. Emotionally speaking, it was just beginning. I reached into my binder, removed 1 page, placed it beside the insurance file, Ashley's email. The one she accidentally sent me. I didn't explain it, didn't accuse anyone, didn't ask questions. I simply placed it there, documentation, not emotion, exactly as Melissa Hart had taught me. The room became silent, completely silent. I counted 11 seconds. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the air conditioner seemed louder. Finally, I stood, collected my binder, and delivered the only sentence I had planned, a quiet sentence, a factual sentence, an irrefutable sentence. I didn't change the document, I just remembered it. Then I left. I didn't wait for responses. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Because for the first time since all this began, the documents were speaking louder than anyone in the room. And over the following weeks, I would learn just how expensive that silence had become for every person sitting at that table. 3 months passed before the consequences settled into their permanent shapes. Not dramatic consequences, not movie consequences, real ones, the kind that arrive slowly, the kind that stay. The kind that show up in bank statements, community conversations, and empty chairs at family gatherings. Those are usually the ones that matter most. Mark returned to work in September, part-time at first, then gradually full-time. His physical recovery was stronger than anyone expected. His professional recovery wasn't. News travels in corporate environments, not officially, never officially, but it travels. Someone hears something, someone repeats something, someone connects dots. Soon enough, people knew there had been an insurance dispute. They knew there had been another woman. They knew documents had surfaced. Nobody knew every detail. They didn't need to. Reputations aren't damaged by complete stories. They're damaged by enough truth. The financial consequences arrived first. The invalid beneficiary challenge triggered additional legal review. Mark paid nearly $84,000 in attorney fees over the next 6 months. I know because portions became part of later disclosures. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who spent years hiding information was now paying professionals to explain it. The image consequences hit harder, for Diane especially. The architect always cares most about appearances. That's why they're architects. They build narratives, not relationships, narratives, and hers collapsed, not publicly in some dramatic scandal. Quietly, which is worse. Church friends stopped calling as often. Community invitations became less frequent. People smiled politely, then sat somewhere else. I heard about it from 3 different sources. Independent confirmations, I counted, 3. When multiple people tell the same story separately, it's usually true. One afternoon, I ran into an old neighbor at a grocery store. We hadn't spoken in years. She looked uncomfortable. Then she said, "I always wondered why you were the only one doing all the work." That sentence stayed with me, because she wasn't talking about the insurance, or Ashley, or the affair. She was talking about 14 years of marriage. People notice more than we think. Sometimes they just don't say anything until later. Ashley's consequence was different, more practical, more expensive, less emotional. After the insurance dispute ended, the future she expected disappeared with it. The apartment she and Mark had discussed renting never materialized. The financial plans they had built around assumptions suddenly looked very different. Reality often invoices people for expectations they haven't earned. She texted me once, exactly once. The message arrived at 7:22 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember because I saved it. She wrote, "You could have handled this differently." 26 characters, no apology, no accountability, no acknowledgement, just disappointment that reality had not cooperated with her plans. Beneficiary rarely feels guilty. They feel inconvenienced. I didn't reply, I blocked the number, and that was the end of our communication. Mark reached out several times. Emails, texts, one handwritten letter. The letter was 4 pages long. I read it twice, then filed it. Item 58. The letter contained explanations, regrets, context, history. What it didn't contain was a way back. Some bridges aren't destroyed in a single moment. They're dismantled board by board over years. By the time people notice, the river is already between them. I sold the house the following spring. The same house we bought 14 years earlier. The same house with unfinished drywall and contractor notes. The same house where I once believed permanence and loyalty meant the same thing. The sale closed on April 17. I stood inside the empty living room afterward. No furniture, no photographs, no voices, just sunlight through the windows. I counted 13 seconds before locking the door one final time. 13, then I left. The new place was smaller. A townhome near Freedom Park. 2 bedrooms, 1 office, a small balcony overlooking trees. For the first time in years, every object inside belonged to a life I had chosen myself. Not negotiated, not inherited, not defended. Chosen. Then came Robert's voicemail. The enforcer's apology. The one that arrived too late. The one that mattered anyway. It came on a Thursday morning at 9:14. I remember because the timestamp matched the accidental email Ashley had once sent me. Funny how numbers circle back. I almost didn't listen. Almost. Instead, I pressed play. Robert's voice sounded thinner than I remembered. Older, tired. He spoke slowly, carefully, as though each sentence carried weight. "Claire." A pause. I should have called years ago. Another pause. I saw things I chose not to see. His voice cracked slightly, not dramatically. Just enough. I kept telling myself it wasn't my place. 3 seconds of silence, then, the truth is I was afraid of conflict. I sat completely still, listening, counting, breathing. Robert continued. You deserved someone to say this sooner. What happened wasn't right. Another pause, longer this time. I let silence become permission. I closed my eyes. His next words stayed with me more than anything else. I thought staying neutral made me a good man. It didn't. Then the voicemail ended. Just like that, no request for forgiveness, no justification, no attempt to repair the past, just truth. Late, honest, small, human. I played the voicemail 3 times, then saved it, without responding. Some things need to be said. That doesn't mean they need to be answered. A year has passed now, not enough time to erase anything, enough time to understand it. There's a difference. Mark and I communicate only through attorneys when necessary. Ashley is a stranger again. Diane occasionally sends holiday cards. I don't respond. Robert sends one brief email every few months, updates. Nothing more. Sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't. The relationship exists somewhere between distance and forgiveness. A place without a clear name, a place that feels honest. Before I finish, I want to ask you something. Have you ever discovered that the person who betrayed you wasn't the only one involved? If you have, comment the word truth. And tell me your city. I read every comment. If stories like this resonate with you, subscribe and share your thoughts below. Sometimes hearing someone else's experience reminds us we weren't imagining our own. Tonight I'm sitting on the balcony of my townhome overlooking the trees near Freedom Park. The air is cool. The city is quiet. In my hands is a certified copy of that 2014 beneficiary form, the paper that waited 11 years to tell the truth. I don't feel victorious when I look at it. And I don't feel angry anymore either. What I feel is something smaller than triumph and stronger than relief. Something earned. The feeling that comes from knowing a document remembered what people tried to forget. And as the last light disappears behind the trees, I place the form back into its folder, close it carefully, and sit there a little longer, listening to the quiet.